This is Climaforum. This is where the People's Climate Summit was held, which ironically was held out in the Polo Club, 32 kilometres down into the jungle. Everything was kind of bizarre. We had politicians in a golf resort. We had hippies and activists in the Polo Club. Actually, it was the most beautiful setting of all. So there was lots of conversations, lots of engagement, lots of dialogue speakers, examination on issues such as degrowth, which has become really prevalent now, gender balance, actual solutions, but also the press came down. They spent a lot of time here in the first week. It was a very pleasant environment. This is just really when it was starting out, but we had a couple of thousand people coming through on this and camping there as well. I want to just show you a few diagrams, and these demonstrate in these diagrams what's happening with our climate negotiations. So this was last year in Copenhagen. We have 3 circles here. The governments, and this is geographically accurate. This shows where the governments were. It was in the Bella Center, which was 7 kilometers away from where the People's Climate Summit at Climaforum was held, down in the meatpacking district in Copenhagen. So the governments were in the Bella Center, huge amounts of security, and on the periphery we had what I've termed legal entities. So you had NGOs and you also had business. In fact, the amount of lobbyists there for big business, non-green business, exceeded the amount of negotiators that were actually negotiating problems. We have anything between 5 and 5,000 negotiators per country. That's 5 and 500, sorry, per country. So the larger you are, of course, America has 500. The smaller you are, Kiribati or the Maldives, you're looking at 5 negotiators. This creates a huge imbalance in what's happening in the political arena. So those who have the most amount of negotiators have the most amount of welly here. This is part of the imbalance that we're witnessing. Now, compare this, which when I was in Copenhagen, I thought was quite a dreadful situation, that we had this disparity, this physical, geographical, but also mental separation between governments and people. And that was clearly demonstrated by the heavy policing of the event. And also what happened this year. And what happened this year was even more disparate entities. So there was a deliberate separation of people engagement. There were 2 areas for legal entities. There was a closed one where the majority of the NGOs were at Cancun, Messi. So you had to have an observer pass to enter into that space. And then there was the open one, which was really for a green business, or any business actually, which was open to the public. But that only opened in the last 3 days and was largely empty for the most of the time. The governments themselves, as I said, they were down in the Moon Palace. So we had this huge separating out. And in the last days, civil society really mobilized itself around, look, this is no good. What are we going to do for next year? This is getting worse, not better. And also it was that sense that ultimately at the end of the day, it couldn't remain the way it was going, because to remain silent on these issues in a system of gross injustice, and it was recognized that the one small solution that came out of their RED Plus, which is not going to make any difference, and which now the NGOs are saying, and scientists are saying, is assigning us to between 4 and 7 degrees increase in temperature, to actually walk away from that and not engage on it is to remain complicit. Now, I cannot do that. And I ask you also to recognize that, in fact, we as civil society are now going to need to ask our governments to come forward and actually take their role of being in service to their peoples who have voted them in and put in place proper solutions. What we saw in Climaforum, both in Copenhagen and also this year in Cancun, is that all the solutions are out there that we require, but it's implementation. So what we want for next year is this. It's overlap between governments, legal entities and peoples, and interaction and engagement. And that's where we need to go.